Hello, everyone. We're a bit running a little bit late, so we will get started. Please take your seats. All right. So, good day, everyone, and I hope you all have already an exciting start, and I can assure you that we will have even more generative and exciting conversation with our forum here on RES as technology, technologies of racialization, and thank you for joining us. So this will be particularly focused on multidimensional interplay between technology and race and the role of international law in the past and present and how it plays a dual role in this discussion of race, technology, and the role of law. And we have today three fantastic speakers with us who will walk us through the different facets of this query, from racial technologies of bordering, essentialist international law and technology, to the epistemic reflections on digital rule of law, e-justice, and e-governance. What I'll do is I will quickly introduce our three speakers, and then I'll hand over the stage and time to them. But one note to add is one of the speakers will not be with us, but she very generously and kindly shared her video with us, and I'll share that. Our first speaker is Amin Parsa. Amin is an assistant professor of sociology of law at Halmstad University, and his talk today will be on borders as technologies of racial production and racial technologies of bordering. Our second speaker, who is Rebecca Mignot Madavi, and Rebecca is not with us, but we have her video, and she is an assistant professor of international law at Sciences Po Law School, and her talk will be on essentialism in international law and technology. Our last but not least speaker is Siddharth Peter de Souza. He is an affiliate researcher at Tilburg Institute for Law, Technology, and Society, and an incoming assistant professor at Center for Interdisciplinary Method at Warwick University. And he will be speaking on the topic of implementing a digital rule of law, epistemic reflection on development practices. So now with this, I will directly hand over the time and stage for Amir, please.
Thank you very much. Can we have the PowerPoints on? Oh, lovely. Do you want to stick it? Yes, I do want it. Oh, lovely. Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm glad that you also chose this forum to spend your morning. This paper that I'm presenting today is primarily about racial word-making function of borders, with a focus on two digital border technologies, digital border control technologies. Recently, there has been an increased interest in international law to understand the legal regime of border control, mostly that of Europe, through the lens of racial hierarchies of mobility and its coloniality. International law scholars have offered a variety of entry points for exploring how race and racism operates at and beyond borders. These trajectories often draw on critiques of the state of emergency, case-by-case examination of racial discrimination in the context of affording protections to border crossers, or else examination of historical development of the current regime of passports and visa entries. I build on these trajectories of racial critiques of borders in international law to argue that legal scholarship, by and large, has insufficiently discussed racial word-making as a structural function of borders, a reason for which can be international law's unquestioned relationship with borders in the form of the sovereign's right to discriminate at borders based on nationality. This inability to problematize borders elsewhere in other disciplines is dubbed as methodological nationalism or a statist perspective. To problematize, or as B.S. Chimney suggests, de-essentialize borders in international law, I argue that racial word-making function of border can be traced in at least 3 sites. First, the epistemology of borders that come to replace other ways of organizing life. Then, the mobility laws, which can be traced to colonial context, and the infrastructure of bordering that overlaps with that of imperial wars and colonial plunder. Here, in this presentation, I'm not focusing on these arguments. Instead, I will focus on what I call racial word-making function of digital border control technologies. I understand word-making function of border technologies in 2 ways. First, as their role in shaping the social relation of movement, where distinction between travel and migration, migrant and refugee, formal and informal labor, regular and irregularized traveler are produced, maintained, and enforced as an integral infrastructure for distributing life chances, deciding who is to be protected and who is to be exposed to injury, death, or exploitation. Second, word-making refers not just to making or rationalizing new forms of economic or social relations in which places and peoples are valued differently for purpose of exclusion. Technological word-making, for me, also refers to production of new pathways, epistemologies, and possibilities of action for law to pick up, adopt, or at least benefit from. To give an example in passing, the broadly used terminology of external borders or near border areas in policy documents and legal scholarships of migration is one such word-making function of technologies. Here, technologies of surveillance from afar, producing new geographies where matters of jurisdiction and right are to be contested. As such, accounting for technological word-making involves moving beyond viewing law as the primary mode of shaping the world, worthy of examination in legal thought. It also requires recognizing that technologies, in shaping the world, enact their own socio-legal imaginaries of the world, albeit formally or informally. Thus, to understand technological word-making, one must examine both the output of these technologies as well as the social structure of relations they engender, enact, or enable. In the context of technologies of border control, I am particularly looking at 2 types of technologies. First, and perhaps the most talked about technology, is the biometric technologies of identification, fingerprinting, facial recognition technologies, and so on. The second technology I look at is the dialect identification assistance systems, or DIAS. For the sake of time, I jump over biometric technology and how they participate in making a racial world of travel. Suffice it to say that biometrics contribute to this process in 3 ways. 1, by carrying or facilitating modes of knowledge production predicated on fixating meanings upon bodies, but also continuously remaking those meanings, what Simone Brown calls digital epidermalization. And a good contribution in this regard is Dimitri's piece in European Journal of International Law on virtual borders. Second, by continuing the epistemologies of risk and criminality from their colonial context of development to that of contemporary border sites. And third, by embodying and furthering a racialized operational rationale. The other example I engage with is dialect identification assistance system, or DIAS. Developed and used by German migration and refugee authorities, DIAS is an automated accent processing tool that purportedly determines a person's place of origin. Individual border crossers are asked to talk about a certain topic in a telephone-like instrument that records their speech. DIAS then scans the recording against a database of pre-recorded and authenticated sample speeches from the region in which people speak the same language as the border crosses. The machine is claimed to predict a speaker's country of origin by comparing similarities in phonemes, accents, dialects, vocabulary, and pronunciation. The final product of DIAS is a printed report estimating the percentage of probability of applicant's origin. For instance, 79.9 Arabic Levantine or 13.7 from Gulf region. DIAS is an example of word-making function of border technology, which put people and places in an assumed relationship, and as such produces new pathway, platform, or avenues for law to mount itself upon and generate decision. Even though DIAS does not produce a definitive decision, it does produce enough uncertainty to render the border crosser's account unreliable and hence authorizing at least the rejection of protection claim, or at most determining a destination of ensuing deportation. Like other truth-seeking technologies, such as biometrics, DIAS produces what it claims to detect and unravel. This is because DIAS relies on flattening the heterogeneity of its subjects to model generalizable pattern of credibility. The fact that people adopt their language and dialect depending on their interlocutors and situation, or that life experiences, trauma, class, or level of education directly impact the manner of a speech, that is, the relational aspect of a speech, is removed from the logic of comparison against a temporally static database of source phenoms. This flattened yet administratively relied upon truth production goes hand in hand with the racial assumption of the other as a static, non-adaptive, non-developing, and contextless entities whose language, speech, and mannerism can be captured, stored, repeated, relayed, relied upon timelessly. Furthermore, the racial assumption sitting at the heart of this form of technological determinism is the assumption that the otherwise arbitrarily drawn boundaries between nation-states are reflective of definitive similarities and differences in the real world, that such arbitrary political construction, which is nationality, is homogeneously mirrored, and also that this political construction is homogeneously mirrored in the language and speech and mannerism of a whole population. Such assumption, on the one hand, reinforces ethno-national agendas and imaginaries of a state by assuming all Iranians speak the one and same language, while on the other hand, ignoring the decisive variation that exists in languages, abilities to speak and impose national language, accents and dialects across time, class, ethnicity, and education. In flattening these nuances of people who cross border, DIAS is a technology of racial word-making by putting people in their place, i.e. in their assumed ethno-national original location. Yet, my actual argument in this paper tries to go beyond this, arguing that focusing exclusively on technological operation in their immediate context often overlooks how border technologies, as part of a bordering process, collectively contribute to creation and furthering of an unequal world of travel. To consider the word-making function of border technologies entailed dislocation, allowing us to see how in technological operation, law finds resources to draw upon, or else how borders enact the violence of borders in different scales. The racial word-making of biometric credibility assessment technologies and other surveillance and control technologies goes beyond misreading or miscategorizing racialized bodies. The world of fixated and non-negotiable identities as written on one's biometric attributes, and the world of approximated place of origin discerned from speech patterns and mannerism, simultaneously is also the world of haraga, in Arabic, those who burn. Those who not only burn their passports as evidence of their identity and place of origin, but also those who burn fingertips with razor, fire, acid to reduce machine readability. Those whose bodies are always already exposed to self-harm, but also border violence and premature death. The racial word-making of border technology is to be traced in the material outcome of turning self-harm into a permanent feature of border transgression. The technological world of border walls, integrated watchtowers enhanced with seismic and infrared sensors is also the world in which people on travel are pushed to dangerous terrain where they are regularly exposed to death. Similarly, introduction of CO2 detectors, heat detectors, X-ray technologies at border crossing is inevitably production of the world in which irregularized travelers suffocate in the back of refrigerated trucks. Travelers crossing West Africa dying in desert space between Tunisia and Libya, between Algeria and Niger, are not separable from technological innovation of border that weaponizes body and speech as deterrent. Technologies that, in effect, dislocate European border imagery from territory to the actual body of the border crossers. In their war-making ability, borders and technologies of border control are racial, for, as Ruth Wilson Gilmore says, racism specifically is the state's sanction on extra-legal production of group-differentiated vulnerability to premature death. Merely focusing on actual function of technologies, their mishaps, histories, or abuses as sites of production of racial hierarchy overlooks how technologies enact and intensify an equal distribution of life chances while exposing certain people to death. Quite literally then, borderland is, as Gloria Anzaldúa said, una herida, an open wound, when the third world grates against the first and bleeds. Thank you.
We can have now the video play.
Good morning. I'm really sorry I can't be with you in person today, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my thoughts on whether we need a new theory of human rights in the face of new technologies. In my presentation, I'm going to propose to you that what we need to do is update the framework for implementing human rights, and especially strengthening.
Yeah, that's definitely not Rebecca's voice, so hopefully we will get the video up and